Hey everybody, Kristen here. I haven't been on in a little while, so I've been looking forward to going live again though and chatting with you guys about something that um, has definitely been on my heart and mind a lot over the past 10 plus years that I've been struggling um, with my illness and um, our daughter being born prematurely and losing a job in the midst of it all. And a lot of times, um, people will ask me, "Well, how did you get through all that? Well, how did you still hang on to your faith? How did you trust God?" Um, all those nitty gritty kind of questions, and I think they're really important questions to talk about and to uh, dig in deep and honestly have a genuine conversation about with one another, because uh, it's normal to question when you're going through trials in life, when you're going through suffering. It is perfectly normal to question, why is God allowing this in my life? Why why is he not preventing it? Um, you know, I struggled with that question as soon as I started experiencing pain in my left hand, excuse me. And to this day, like, um I don't really I don't really struggle as much necessarily with the why, but I'll still ask it, and I think when I ask it, it's more of a an emotional response to my pain, like when a child asks why when they're like 3 years old and they start asking, "Why, mommy? Why, daddy?" If you're a parent, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But um, just when kids do that, I mean, they don't necessarily want the entire full answer. They just want you to, they just want that assurance, I guess, that you're there. And I think sometimes that's what we do as believers. I think when we ask why, sometimes it's more of a, daddy hold me kind of thing when you're crying out to him and you can't move in the middle of the night, or you just had a terrible accident, or whatever trial you're facing. Even if it's not physical, it could be something totally different, and it's normal to. I think it's normal to question those kind of things, and so anyway, I thought I would just share my heart on this and talk to everybody about it, because it's definitely a topic that comes up a lot, and um, I've gotten asked this quite a bit, by friends and family and people that know our situation and know what we've been through. So, um, maybe you question, like, why is God allowing this trial in my life right now? Why is he allowing the depression to creep back in? Why did I just get diagnosed with cancer? Why? Like, there are so many different things that I know other people are struggling with big time right now. Um, and so anyway, I just thought I would uh, tell you guys some of the answers to the questions that I've had over the years, and hopefully that will encourage you as you walk whatever road of suffering you might be on. Or maybe you're not on a road of suffering, but suffering does come in life, and so eventually you probably will face something that um, is really, really difficult, and and it's good to wrestle with these questions even before you go through something. But it definitely makes it more real when you're there. So anyway, sometimes I've wrestled with the question, well, God, couldn't I do more for your kingdom? Like, couldn't I go out there and serve better somehow, have more energy to serve, and like, why are you allowing this in my life right now, basically? Because I feel like in my mind, it works way better if I'm healthy and if I'm not in tons of pain and if my husband doesn't have to come bring me my medicine in the morning. And like, there's just all these different things where I'm thinking, God, I feel like I could probably serve you better than this. And obviously, in those moments, I go back to the verses like, my ways are higher than your ways, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. And that those are the moments when I just have to say, okay, I can't see it. I can't see it right now. But I have to trust that God is there and he knows what's best. And um, I think also God looks, uh, I know that God looks on your inward appearance more than your outward. Man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks at your inward appearance. And so, um, I guess all that to say, um, sometimes when we go through trials, they, when we go through fire, I guess you could say it's kind of like a fire. The Bible references that, like when you're going through a fire and it's burning hot, blazing around you, and the only thing that's going to be left, the only thing that's going to stand in a fire is what's real. And um, everything else is going to be just burnt away, gone. And um, I think in my own life, I've really seen um, I've really seen how God can show me different things that I didn't even realize I needed to work on, or I didn't realize that they were there. And um, the Lord, the Lord shows me that through different trials or different things that we've gone through that I never would have, um, I guess, realized without going through that. So, um, anyway, sometimes something that happens with me is I wake up in the middle of the night, and I don't get the greatest sleep in the world because obviously I have chronic pain, and um, it's just really hard to fall asleep. And then even when I fall asleep, sometimes I'll wake up with just this terrible, terrible pain in my arms or in my legs. And it's really in those moments where, it's quiet, the rest of my family's asleep, um, whatever it might be. All I can hear is silence. And sometimes that's a little bit deafening for me when I'm in so much pain and I feel like my insides are just going crazy. And then, um, I don't know. For me, it's really hard when I wake up and it's just me and my thoughts and God. And those are the moments, though, that I've really wrestled with a lot of different questions and truths about who God is. And um, anyway, so I wanted to share. I wanted to share kind of, I guess, at the beginning of all of this, when my hand first started hurting, and I was still able to run, and I was still able to do things that I enjoyed doing, but I mean, it hurt. My hand was in a ton of pain, and I just wanted to share kind of, I guess, how I thought of God at that moment, because I'd never really experienced like anything crazy up to that point. Life was pretty good. I had a really great childhood. I was super healthy. I um I never ever would have thought that I would have a neurological disease like this. Um, and in case you don't know, I have small fiber polyneuropathy, and they think it's the autoimmune kind. Um, and I've also got migraines, uh, which they're pretty much being taken care of by a preventative medicine that I've started over the last week or two. But I've got migraines, I've got the small fiber polyneuropathy, and then I've also got early onset Addison's, is what my endocrinologist thinks it is. Basically, my body doesn't make the stress hormone cortisol. So that's kind of what's going on with me. So it's really hard for me to move in the mornings and different things like that. And I've been in a lot of pain ever since I was, I think I just turned 19 years old when I was in college. So, all that to say, I I kind of pictured my trial that I was going through at the time. Like, I guess I pictured God as, um, I don't know, almost like kind of not totally turning his back on me, but just kind of like not realizing that I was, you know, that I was suffering so much or something. And I don't know why I thought that way, because it's not theologically sound, but sometimes things don't make sense in your head when you're A, young and still learning about theology, and B, you're feeling so many different awful things and awful emotions going through your mind. And it just kind of, it's a great stepping stool for Satan, I guess, to get into your life and in your head. And so Satan was kind of playing with my mind a lot in college. Um and I think I just really struggled with the fact that I was hurting and there was nothing anybody could really do about it, because nobody could figure it out for so long. And that to me was the worst kind of pain, because um and maybe that's why I viewed God as kind of not caring. Like, it's not like I don't think I viewed him as intentionally turning his back on me because he just wasn't there. Like, it's just that if I felt like he didn't care or something like that. He was apathetic towards my suffering, and I just needed to get through it. And um maybe it wasn't as big of a deal as I was making it out to be. Maybe I wasn't hurting as badly because nobody could figure it out. Um, excuse me. All those different kind of things and all those different kind of feelings kind of crept in, and I think that I projected them onto who I felt like God was, or was becoming in my mind. And that made me super depressed, because I felt like, where are you? Why are you not taking this from me? I've prayed about this. I don't understand what's going on. Why can't I have any answers? And I didn't I didn't know it at the time, thank goodness. Otherwise, I don't know if I would have made it, honestly. But I mean, it took 8 more years for someone to come up with my diagnosis, and that was really difficult. And there were a lot of moments throughout that time, especially in college, though, where uh, I just I kind of felt like, um, it felt like Satan wanted to just kill off any zeal that was left in me, anything that was left from my faith. I felt like, well, Satan just wants to kill it all off. And I felt like the enemy was really, really attacking me, which I think was the case still. Um but in my mind, I was kind of blaming a lot of it on the enemy and Satan, and saying, like, he's getting into my head, which, like, I think that he was. But what I'm saying is, I blamed it an awful lot on the enemy, instead of realizing that Satan can only chip away at what isn't really real and authentic. Like, if the fire is testing you, then um it can only burn away at things that, um I guess, aren't eternal. Um like, a fireplace in a house is built to withstand all different kinds um, of things, smoke and the actual fire. Like I don't remember how many degrees it can go up to, but it's built with special materials that people have tested over and over and over again to make sure that when they're building your fireplace in your house, you can actually have a fire in there without the rest of your house burning down. So, in my mind, that's what was happening to me. I felt like my entire house was burning down, my body was breaking down, and the only thing that was going to be left at the end was whatever was real. And it amazed me at the throughout this whole thing, and I still it's not like I've arrived or anything, but I mean I still struggle, but um I I mean it's just amazed me at how many things I needed to work on, or how many things I thought that my patience was pretty good, or I thought I thought that I felt, really close to God. And I don't know, there are all these different things in my mind that uh, I I guess I kind of had I figured, well, I guess I didn't think it was as bad um as it was when the fire went through the house, because I thought there would be a lot more patience left, or joy left. Joy was a really big one that I struggled with a lot. Like, what does that look like tangibly, to have joy in the midst of feeling terrible? And so that was really hard for me too. But um, yeah. Anyway, I guess I just felt like God had almost turned his back on me for just the right amount of time to let Satan like get to me or something. It was, and I don't know. I mean, I'm just being real with you guys and telling you how it felt to me, in my mind, in my little college aged mind. But that's how it felt. And and it wasn't necessarily like all the enemy's fault. It was that I had carried those, I guess, assumptions. I had carried them into the trial, and they were being tested, and it wasn't coming out like I thought it was going to. I thought that there would have been more diamonds after all the pressure, and there weren't quite as many diamonds as I thought there would be. And that was very humbling, for sure. And uh, it took a lot of pride out of the equation, and there were a lot of different things that God just chiseled away at in my life. And um, you know I'm in, I don't know if any of you guys are in support groups, but uh, I'm in a few different support groups. One of them is like a Christian chronic pain support group. One of them is like a mom support group. And um, most of these support groups are believers, or fairly positive. There's one that's not so positive, but for the most part, they're pretty good. And this one gal had posted on the site that like the support group messaging thing, and she lived in, I believe, the Caribbean. It was somewhere where they're very superstitious about things. And by superstitious, I mean like they tend to blame sickness, or any kind of trial you're facing, they tend to blame it on your lack of faith, or you're not praying enough, or God's trying to tell us something about you. Like, just it's pretty uh it's pretty disheartening when you're already going through something. And so for a lot of people around you, that tell you, well, you must be on the wrong track, or well, God must be trying to punish you. Like, that is that would just be so hard to hear. Like, I can't really imagine going through that, because uh where I live, I mean, or maybe it's just the people that surround me, like, they aren't superstitious. And anyway, I haven't really had, I've had a couple people say something sort of similar, but nothing like this one gal was writing about. So anyway, she was writing into our group, and she was saying, um, I live in a place where they see illness as basically a direct message from God that I'm not doing the right thing. Um, and somehow, he's trying to punish me. And what do you guys think about all this? And um, I guess I wrote back to her because it just really bothered me, because it's just already so hard when you're going through stuff. And for her family and close friends to tell her this, it honestly made me think of the book of Job, where uh, his God was basically like, you better pray for your friends, because uh, otherwise, like, I'm I'm not gonna hear from them, basically, because they kept telling Job, when he was going through all that, they kept giving him really bad advice. And basically, they were saying the same kind of things that this gal's family was saying to her. So, um, anyway, I don't know. I just felt really called to write it back. And so I did. And, um, I don't know. One of the things, I just wanted to bring this up, I guess, because I didn't realize how huge of a deal this was for some people, or that this was even something that um, people truly thought about nowadays. Because I just, I don't know, it just blows my mind. But anyway, I wanted to bring it up, though, because I think that there are people out there that probably struggle with this or can relate to this person. And one of the things that I was telling her about was Job. And I guess I would venture to say that because of Job's faith, um, he went through trials of many kinds. Like, it wasn't because of his lack of faith, it was because he was faithful. And Satan was basically trying to say to God, like, he was trying to, put egg on God's face, basically, or on his good name, and saying, like, well, God, yeah, of course Job loves you. Look at all the stuff you blessed him with. And then God's basically like, okay, well, here, you go. Tell you what, you can do anything you want to him except for kill him. And, and then we'll see. We'll see if Job um, stays faithful to me or not. And Job did. And I guess I just picture all of heaven peering over and watching as, you know, as Job was just crumbling under so much loss and pain, physical, mental, just everything, and spiritual pain, just feeling like, God, what is going on? Why are you allowing this in my life? And I just picture, like, because he had no idea that this huge thing was going on in heaven, where, Satan and God were like having a conversation about him. And it was this big thing in the spiritual world, and so huge that there's an entire book um called Job in the Bible. And he didn't realize that though when he was going through all of it, and he although he cried out to God and asked a lot of questions, um, he stayed faithful to the Lord. And I think that shows that when we go through things, it's okay to cry out to God and question things. And as long as we're talking to Him and um, choosing to praise Him still through it all. And, um, you know, I think it's okay to cry out to Him like that and just be blatantly honest with Him, you know, and have reverence and fear the Lord and all that kind of stuff too, and have respect for the God who created the universe, but also to acknowledge that He's in on the little details of our lives, and um, He already knows what's going on in our minds and hearts, and He wants us to be honest with Him. He He loved us. It's not that we loved Him, it's that He loved us. And I don't know, that right there is reason enough to keep going back to God, even if you're going through a really tough time right now and you're saying, God, where are you? Like, I don't even, I can't even find you right now because there's so much darkness encompassing me. You know, like I just can't, I feel like I can't go on. Like those are the kind of dark moments that I'm talking about, and I've been through several of those nights, and the only thing that has gotten me through any of that has been relying on the Lord and knowing He is sovereign, um, good or bad, what I deem as good or bad, um, in my life. And anyway, sorry. So, little tangent there. But anyway, back to this girl that was on I was like messaging her back and forth about how her family basically didn't support her at all, was very superstitious about things, all that, um, saying that this was her fault and that she knew the answer to her healing. Um, and what they meant by that was, well, you already know the answer. Well, you already know, you know what you should do. You're just not doing it. So, in other words, you're not having enough faith. That's what they were telling this gal, and she's about my age, maybe a little bit younger, and going through some pretty severe health problems. And she kept asking, like, is this true? Has God abandoned me? Like, what? Where's the theology behind this? You know, she was asking really good questions and being told lies by her family. And um, anyway, so yeah, we were talking about Job a little bit, and um, because of his faith, not because of his lack of faith, because of his faith, God was um, putting his faith to the test. You know, he was putting Job to the fire and seeing what was left. Um, you know, and I just picture all of heaven peering over, and every choice that Job make, the angels say, "Hey, look at Job. Let's watch what he chooses today. What's he gonna choose today?" And I know it sounds kind of goofy, but sometimes when I'm having a really, really hard day with pain, I think I think of that. I think, you know, maybe this isn't happening right now, but what if heaven is looking at me? What if there's a great cloud of witnesses looking down at me and saying, "Hey, is she going to choose joy?" Because every time Job chose God over his suffering, every time he chose holding on to his faith and being loyal to his creator, um, it was a slap in the face for Satan and a huge, huge win for him. And he didn't realize what was going on in the unseen world. He didn't realize any of that. But not when he was going through it, at least. But I guess that's what I'm saying is, if we're gonna say that faith, lack of faith, brings you, illness and trials of all different kinds, then why is the book of Job in the Bible? Okay, I don't understand the logic on that, I guess, because the entire book of Job is about him going through things because he was faithful. Because he was faithful, God said you can do everything to him but kill him, basically. And Satan did all kinds of different tactics to try and get him to, the Bible says, to curse God and die. That's what that verse appears quite a few times. I believe it appears quite a few times in the book of Job, and Job never did. He didn't say, nope, I'm done, God. I'm not going to follow you anymore. All that to say, that book of the Bible right there tells us that we can't assume that because somebody's going through something, that must mean they don't have enough faith to be healed. That must mean that maybe they're involved in some kind of sin and God's just disciplining them, and which God does discipline his children. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I don't think that should be our first assumption. Which for most people that I know this isn't really a huge problem with illnesses, especially things like that. I live in Kansas in America, and that's not really the issue usually surrounding suffering from where we live. But apparently in the Caribbean and in many other countries, that is the first assumption, and I just think that's awful because you're already going through so much. So but anyway, I guess my main point with that is there's another reality that's going on all around us, and the Bible talks about the things which are seen and the things which are unseen. There's a veil, basically. There's a lot of mystery surrounding the unseen, but we know that it's there, and because we know that there is an unseen world around us, I think that's how we should react to suffering, and realize that maybe the reason we don't know all the answers in this life is because it has something to do with the world that is unseen and not just the physical world that's surrounding us. That's another reason that we might be suffering and not know the answer as to why. And it could be something taking place in the heavenly realms and have nothing to do with here on earth necessarily, or so I think we can't fully know right now why we're suffering necessarily, but I think that the Bible says right now we know in part. Someday when we get to heaven, we'll know in full. I know I didn't quote that correctly, but I'm really bad with remembering where verses come from, but you can look that one up, if you want to. So anyway, another thing that I messaged this gal who was on my pain support group was, another example is Paul, right? The Apostle Paul, he wrote so many books of the New Testament. He went through so many trials. And I mean, he was a guy who got knocked off his horse and met Jesus. He met Jesus, excuse me, on the way to Damascus. And, he received a lot of different revelations from the Lord, and he wrote them down, and it's made up a huge part of the Bible. And he writes about suffering. And so, again, we can't just assume that people are going through something because, well, they just don't have enough faith. Are you saying that Paul didn't have enough faith? Because yeah, he was definitely chosen by God to preach the good news like everywhere he went, and he was a major player in bringing the gospel, the hope to Gentiles. So Gentiles, if you don't know, anybody that's not Jewish. So he was like a major player in that, and he loved the Lord, and he suffered a lot. Like Jesus even said, like, once again, can't remember where this verse is from, but I know it's in there. Probably in Acts somewhere if you want to look it up. But I need to get better at that. But anyway, Paul basically said, or I'm sorry, Jesus said to Peter or someone, maybe it wasn't Peter, I don't know, but God spoke to someone and basically said, I will show him how much he has to suffer. Like, he's going to have to suffer a lot. He's going to know the meaning of that word, and he did. And the guy went through a lot. So yeah. And also he writes about a thorn in his side, and he writes about a thorn being in his side, and he asked God 3 times to take it away, and God didn't. He said, my power is made perfect in your weakness. And I don't know what that thorn was, but I mean, to describe a thorn being in your side, that's something that's pretty painful, whether that be a real physical ailment that he had, or if it was a really painful emotional, mental thing. I don't know what it was, but it was so painful that he described it as a thorn in his side. And another person, a great prophet that ended up dying of some unspecified illness was Elisha. And it's interesting, that's in 2 Kings 13. And it's very interesting, though, to note that the man who had the power to heal others and I think bring others back from the dead. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. But he had the power to heal others. But it's interesting because one of his gifts was to heal, and yet he couldn't heal himself at the end of his life. Um he died in his house of some illness. He got really sick for a while and then he died. So it wasn't, and that was a prophet, that was a prophet of the Lord, and he suffered. He his body went out on him and he suffered, and he had tons of faith to be able to heal others, and yet the Lord allowed him to suffer at the end of his life. So anyway, I guess all of that to say, people should not be accusing you of not having enough faith, because you have an illness or a physical problem or a disability or whatever it is, fill in the blank. Or if tons of bad things are happening around you or to you, it's not some superstitious mumbo jumbo that, um, because you don't have enough faith, this is why you're going through this. No, that's not why at all. That's so not biblical. And if people are telling you that, please, please do not believe them. Um, don't even think about it again, because honestly, those are just like a few examples that I can spout off. There are so many more in the Bible of people who just countless suffering, and there are so many different ways that people can suffer in this crazy world. So, anyway, don't let others accuse you, I guess, of not having enough faith because you're suffering, and don't let your mind go there. Uh, blame yourself somehow, or have this guilt like, oh, maybe should I pray more? Or what if am I not having enough faith? Because I mean, I thought that just in my own mind. Excuse me. I thought that just in my own mind at one point, like, okay, what if I'm not having enough faith and that's why I'm not being healed? When really that's not at all. That's not what it is. So, I guess who can know the mind of God, right? Like, his ways are higher than our ways. What's that verse? As high as the heavens are above the earth, like that's how much higher God's ways are. Something like that. Hold on. I need to find that one. I think I botched it. Sorry. But that's a really good one. Hold on. Let me. Excuse me. I have something in my throat. I'm like. There we go. Oh, okay. So this is from Isaiah 55, 8 through 9. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. So, no one should be telling you that you should already know the answer to your own healing, or you don't have enough faith, and otherwise you'd be healed, because by suggesting that, they're suggesting that Job and Paul and Elisha and so many other people that suffered, King David, oh my goodness, like, I mean, some of the Psalms that he wrote is just like heartbreaking, like how much different people that definitely had faith and they're like giants of the faith in the Bible. They're like heroes of faith. And they suffered. And so that's just a myth that I wanted to dispel about suffering, because I didn't realize how prevalent it was in other countries until I started chatting with a couple people. So also, I just wanted to talk about suffering in terms of when we look at the cross, like when the cross is like a modern day electric chair. So when you're wearing like a little cross necklace and oh, that's such a pretty cross necklace. Why, thank you. If it was like a modern day kind of thing, it would be like, oh, that's such a beautiful electric chair. Oh, well, thank you. Like that's essentially that's how crazy people would have looked at you like, oh, you're insane for wearing a cross around your neck. It was a symbol of torture and a symbol of death. And I read something one time that it said something along the lines of the worst murder in history turned out to be the only hope, the only salvation in all of our stories. The worst murder in history being to Jesus, obviously, because he didn't commit a sin. He didn't do anything wrong. Nothing. Not even a little teensy weensy, what we consider teensy weensy sin. All sin is sin to God. But I guess what I'm saying is Jesus, by dying on the cross, turned the cross a symbol of death and torture and the ultimate in suffering and the worst way to die. He turned that into hope and into eternal life for anyone who would believe. And basically, Jesus has given meaning to suffering. Again, I can't remember who said this, but it's one of my favorite quotes. God permits what he hates in order to accomplish that which he loves. And I think that's such a great way to put suffering, because it's true. Like, God definitely works through suffering, and even though it doesn't look good to us, his ways are higher than our ways. And if we truly believe that, then we will find more meaning in our suffering, I think. So my kids are home, so I'm going to end this broadcast before they pop in and say hi. But I will come back and do another one probably after I put them to bed. So we'll see you guys later.